Hello, everyone. My name is Sana Monzo. I'm a managing director with Deloitte Consulting, leading up our workforce transformation talent acquisition practice and focused on helping organizations understand how to maximize the value of their talent. Today, we're going to be talking about the employee career lifecycle with Stuart Logan, managing director of global HR for Bank of New York Mellon. Stuart focuses on operations, technology, and people experience. And Grant Weinberg, VP of Global Talent Acquisition, HR Operations, and HRIS at TriNet. Stuart, we'd love to kick off with you hearing a little bit about your role at Bank of New York Mellon and what you're focusing on in regards to career development at the bank.
Sure. So thank you very much for having me. I'm Managing Director of Human Resources, supporting the HR business partner for operations and technology function. So that's around 33,000 of the 50,000 employees at the bank. But I'm also accountable for the company's people experience. So how do we take and transform the organization using personas, human-centered design, and sort of the reimagination of the different journeys that people go on throughout their career.
Thanks so much, Stuart. And Grant, we'd love to hear a little bit about your role at TriNet.
Yeah, thanks, and good to be here, and appreciate the invite. But I lead talent acquisition, HR operations, and HR technology, and in some shape and form, they all intersect with each other. And one of the opportunities we have as an HR services company is really to find the model and the future bulletproof approach to talent that not only benefits us as an organization, but we can translate back to our clients so that they can be successful around talent too.
Well, this is certainly an opportune time to be talking about what talent means. From a Deloitte perspective, we've been studying for a long time and helping to understand what the C-suite is focused on when it comes to talent. And one of the things that we know that it's certainly been accelerating as a focus at the C-suite level. In our recent study with Fortune magazine and Deloitte, just in this September, we know that over 50% of the CEOs are focused on talent as one of their main focal points. And that's a dramatic increase. While talent has been an issue for organizations for some time, in particular pockets, we know now with the Great Resignation, the impact of the shortage of talent across different industries and skill sets, that this is just accelerating for our organizations. We also know that often we hear that it's easier for individuals to leave an organization than to find a new opportunity within, or at least that's their perception. Stuart, I'd love to kick off with you. What is your organization doing to combat these challenges for internal mobility and looking at how is it easier to find a job externally rather than stay with an organization?
Well, I think, since I joined the bank like 2.5-3 years ago, we really focus on changing the culture from buying talent to building it. So it's sort of very clear to me that specifically in technology, but in other key, parts of the industry as well, there was naturally going to be a shortage of talent at some point in the future. And I started off knowing that the coding organization, the software development organization, was going to have that challenge. So the foundation is you have to look at the full life cycle of the ecosystem of talent and make sure that you've got the right flow coming through at any given stage. So the first place we started was in our graduate program. When I first joined, out of 11,000 technologists, we only had 40 graduates coming in any given year. That really wasn't enough to build the talent pipeline that we needed in order for us to be successful. And we've since that point received 250 graduates last year, 350 graduates this year, in order to really sort of ramp up our sort of building talent. And then obviously providing those individuals career path opportunities to understand what is their next step in their career, what are the competencies and skills each of those roles have and are expected to have in order for them to progress and move forward. So obviously that's becoming a little bit more clear for the technology organization, and we're in the middle of trying to rebuild and work on reimagination of the jobs in our operations function. As you can imagine, technology is the same, Java is the same in our bank, in another bank, in another technology organization, in a manufacturing organization, it's one and the same. But our operations function is very individualized to ourselves and our bank. So that requires training to happen on systems that our operators use, and some different foundational skills and competency work that needs to be built in order for operations to sort of both be relevant for today and set themselves up for tomorrow. So consider building out that operator of the future, which is sort of business process for engineering, business analysis, project management skills, analytics skills, and sort of that gives you the guidance of how we develop. And obviously providing people career paths and understanding what's next on their career movement is very critical for them to be driven to sort of self-learn, self-develop and grow, and then be sort of a good candidate for that vacancy when it comes available.
Yeah, it sounds like skills is a common theme, Stuart, right? We're hearing a lot about helping an individual understand the skills that they need to be successful in the future. And that also requires our organizations to understand the skills of the future and how we're charting that path forward. Is there something in particular that you're doing around that as you're looking towards continuing to build that capability around skills and helping individuals chart their course forward?
I think that the two pieces that come to mind is a skills inventory. So really sort of taking the jobs and breaking them into competency and skill components. That has to be sort of reimagined in a different way. So a lot of job libraries are quite linear, which means that sort of a very flat job family structure. So what we're trying to create is a job clustering, so job family groups. So software development being a cluster of job families, and then take the capabilities and the skills of those jobs to a much more granular level. So really give us much more better understanding, and then actually complete skill assessments, either by using third-party organizations like Pluralsight has a skill IQ that sort of measures someone's Java proficiency, and then serve up training and recommendation and development for those individuals in that kind of way. So that's obviously one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is to then hone the talent platform to sort of tap relevant candidates with the right amount of authorization. What do I mean by that is that we have to sort of decide if an individual's worked in the same job with the same manager for above 18 months or above 2 years, how can the system help us tap people on the shoulder about moving individuals to the next job, rather than necessarily relying on the employee always looking and sort of on the scout out, or the managers that we all know are sometimes challenged on wanting to motivate their best and brightest to move away from them. So we're really trying to digitize and automate that solution in order to sort of create sort of a mass career system that really helps develop and grow our people from within.
A little bit later, we'll probably talk more about the concept of internal mobility and how it relates to talent management and the talent marketplace strategy. But Grant, I'd love to hear a little bit about what you're doing at TriNet. How does this dilemma of individuals having a difficult time finding opportunities within, or perhaps the perception that there's not transparency, is that something your organization is facing? And if so, how are you addressing it?
I thank the pandemic for two things and two things only. One, that we went to virtual hiring, and two, that I think it'll continue to challenge business leaders and hiring managers in how they think about talent. And so, historically, we've been an organization that has been, like others, has had the luxury of being able to go to the open market and acquire the talent we need at the point in time when we need it. And as those talent pools have dried up or become even more competitive than they were in the past, as an organization, our business leaders are reflecting on, is it better to lose talent and replace it? And we know that that's the wrong answer. And so they are thinking more deeply about how do we take the existing talent within the organization and look at building it. Stuart mentioned, the workforce planning strategies. That does come into play, right? You have to look at what parts of your organization it makes sense to build, because when you say build, you're putting in infrastructure to create the build of the talent versus buying it, right? Which is, it can appear more expensive, but at the same time, you're not building a separate infrastructure to support it. So those are some of the things we're thinking about. We're educating the hiring managers more on defaulting to internal talent as the first step, and then considering if we don't have anybody internally, we're using the leverage of culture add, right? So the culture add philosophy of this person already is part of our culture, understands the values, understands the vision and mission. And so are they capable of going from the job that they're doing today to the job that we need them to do tomorrow? And research shows that highly capable people don't have to have the exact experience of the job you're looking for them to do. What they've just got to have is that capability to learn the new job. And so it's a journey, right? Hiring managers struggle with that concept.
I like that approach, right? Helping people to continue to progress and build on their skills and find more impact that they're delivering to the organization. Are there specific items in your technology roadmap, Grant, that you're looking at that help build this capability for more transparency and more skills development?
Absolutely. One of the when we looked at Eightfold as a product back nearly 2 years ago, we solely were looking at it from a talent acquisition. I was looking to simplify the candidate journey and all the processes and data that sits behind that. As we learned more about the product and we learned about the career hub, which it is today, it's technologies like that can process data much faster than any human can, right? So we're not replacing anybody. We are actually complementing them because they can now do that strategic part of using the data and information when discussing and influencing stakeholders. We also find that there's the advantage of, we as humans see a skill or an experience. Eightfold and other tools like that have the ability to do skills adjacency. And I think that's a big factor that's coming in and we'll see more of as the supply of ready-made talent dries up, the ability to understand if person has X skill or X technology or X experience, what are the adjacencies to that we can leverage and then build upon.
Skills adjacency is such an interesting concept that I think some people haven't been as exposed to because we haven't had the ability to look at those deep insights. How is AI unlocking that?
Yeah, I think it's the ability, one of the team from Eightfold shared with me, just like we've mapped the human genome, we're now mapping the work genome. And so the ability to look at, if you've got a Python developer, the skills adjacency to that would be RPA and SDLC. And so, if you see those on a resume, it gives you confidence that this person either has a programming language or has the ability to be trained very quickly. And so your ramp time, again, on somebody that is a fit for the organization is going to be far shorter with a higher impact. But I think it's an inflection point. It's getting the business to understand we've got these tools, opening these tools up to them. That's something we've done. We've made sure that the hiring managers see the calibration in Eightfold and see how the candidate pool opens and closes based on the skills and experiences that they're looking for.
Great. Well, Stuart, I want to kind of take this a little bit of a different direction. We've been talking about skills. And, we've just heard from Grant the whole concept of calibration and how we look at skills adjacency. One of the things that helps power that is the employee profile. So how important is the employee profile to supporting career journeys? And then how is that being adopted and utilized in your organization?
One of the biggest adjustments has happened within HR technology is moving from sort of a relational database to a graph database. This ability to store data that's independent and connected at the same time. So there's two pieces that are very critical to do. The first thing is you need a job library, as we talked about before, to have the underlying skills and capabilities. But you also need to attach those skills and capabilities to the individual, to the person. So how do you infer skills and capabilities? Well, you could use something like Eightfold as your, when an individual applies that does the matching of the job description and the person using, LinkedIn and resume and connecting the two together. And then that gives you sort of a prioritization list using AI and ML to be able to do that. But at the same time, that skill and capability needs to be used for three other, pieces as well, three core pieces. One is your sort of learning management system and learning experience platform to serve the right learning and training up. The second one is in what I call in-job development, which is what do I want to do, not my job today, but my job of the future, because you want to be able to not just train people where they are in place, but to go somewhere into the future. That effectively links into things like a project marketplace of sort of like gig projects, mentor matching, or things along those lines, which is sort of development in the experience of work. And the third element on what we talked about earlier, again, the internal mobility, both external and internal hiring of individuals. And that all links back to that underlying foundation. So to answer your question on the skill profile, it's very critical when we think about serving up training, when we talk about serving up mentors and career opportunities from an internal mobility perspective, to know where someone is in their role today and how close they are a match of their future role, whether it be something lateral within the job that they're doing at the moment, or an upward movement, which obviously everyone aspires to do as they progress in their career. So that profile becomes very important, but it's sort of a data element that has to be matched up to other things in order to do really cool stuff for developing people.
Yeah, that makes sense. It becomes really that the avenue for being able to understand for the individual themselves where they need to go, where are their skills, what are the opportunities to start developing skills as they are looking at new portions of their career. But some of the other things that you mentioned, Stuart, I thought were really interesting when you think about the talent marketplace concept. You mentioned gig work within an organization. Can you share a little bit more about that? And are there any barriers to getting managers to think about opportunities to serve up as gig work?
Well, I think we're in a very unique situation where, one of the biggest challenges we have, ironically, is internal arbitrage of talent, where it's so in demand at the moment. People are bouncing around inside the organization, and it's creating some level of instability, which is a challenge because, these individuals are in demand. Managers want them. They've only been doing that job with that manager for 6 or 9 months. Should you allow them to move that quickly is one of those natural unintended consequences of being in such a hot market and creating internal mobility. So I think you do need to create some internal rules of the road. So, what is the minimum amount of time should someone sit in a role before they have the sort of keys to drive their career? And I'm not saying that, an individual after 9 months, if their manager is supportive of them moving, will allow them to move. But for example, what happens when people are bouncing around the organization every 6 months? It's not good for the person. It's actually not good for the company. So you have to sort of balance that. And the same thing with the gig work. You have to put some rules. What is a gig? Is it someone doing that work for 3 years at 10% side of desk? Probably not. So you have to put those definitions in place. Is it 12 weeks maximum? Is it no more than 10% of the time? Should you have the managers be able to approve them to go do the gig work or not? Some of our employees are what we call EIO, essential in office, that have certain tasks that they've got to do in the time that they've got available. Some individuals are hourly workers. When they do the gig work, are you paying them overtime to go do this gig work? You have to sort of make those decisions. So ultimately, you have to sort of put those rules of the road in place, and then you have to, in an agile fashion, keep tweaking them, because every solution sometimes creates an issue. So you've got to keep sort of working those rules of the road on a continuous basis to make sure it's relevant for your talent strategy and in place at that time.
Well, what I'm hearing from both of you is a lot of work needs to happen in the planning phase, and then it needs to continue, right? This is definitely a journey. And a lot of this is quite new for organizations, leveraging the AI technology, implementing a talent marketplace, providing these sorts of opportunities. So it is something that requires a significant investment. But I think what we're seeing is a lot of organizations are seeing a real benefit from that. One of the statistics we've seen for organizations who have been able to effectively adopt some of the gig marketplace concepts internally is, literally unlocking tens of thousands of hours for people who are participating in projects. And not only are they, making an impact on the business, but making an impact on, perhaps mentoring and training others or gaining new skills themselves. So lots of benefits, but certainly, quite a road and a journey to get there. Grant, we've been talking about this concept of internal mobility, and Stuart, thanks for sharing, some of the considerations in terms of movement. One of the things we've seen in the past is sometimes the policies and processes that we have, from a legacy perspective, really do put barriers in place, right? So you're able to, take an opportunity outside of an organization and move rather quickly. But, if your internal policies are a barrier to that, sometimes, you pay the price. So what are you seeing, Grant, like in your organization? How are you looking at those processes and policies, and what do you think that will look like for your organization moving forward?
Yeah, great question. I think the word agile comes to mind, that as the external talent market, excuse me, and the internal talent market continues to be as vibrant as it is today, the ability to really get business leaders to understand that if we were going to lose somebody externally, we were getting 2 weeks notice, maybe 4 weeks notice if it was somebody more senior. And so if they can think a little bit about the impact of an employee leaving the organization on 2 weeks notice, therefore how can we facilitate internal mobility along the same lines? And so I see it a little bit about how do you reduce the enticement and the enticement, excitement, and opportunity of moving from your current company to an external company. If you remove some of those factors, then it almost makes it a no-brainer for them to stay within the same organization, right? They know the stakeholders, they've already established a career, they're growing their career, and the organization is facilitating it. So I think it's that ability for the organization to think differently. I also think talent needs, we rely heavily on talent to create profiles, to maintain their profiles. I do think that that's still an opportunity. I think that reliance on the employee when they have so many options internally and externally, some form of automation or a process that is maybe linked to performance management. As you can tell, I haven't quite cracked the magic code here, but I do think that's another part of this process in order to create ongoing success for internal mobility.
That's such a great point. Really, we do know that creating those talent profiles is so important, but everyone's ability to understand the process or maybe invest the time in keeping it up to date is not always consistent. And so, yes, we're seeing organizations who are, tying that to certain time periods, right? The performance cycle and how do you feed that in? We're also seeing some exciting things, I think, with the technology itself. And when you look at what Eightfold can do in terms of profile enrichment and literally being able to go out across 600 plus external sources and collect publicly available data as an aspect of profile enrichment is an interesting consideration. So we're working with an organization that's exploring that. So in addition to the employees self-reporting their skills, how do you go through that process to leverage AI and look at all the the components in their experience? Perhaps when they came in, they didn't port in the information or experience that they've had in the past, and they focus more on the skills and experiences they've had at an organization. But what we find is by really tapping into holistically the whole human experience of that individual, whether that's been volunteering experiences or other career experiences that may be different than what they're doing at your organization today, and looking at those, we can see kind of enlarged and enriched skills insights. Are there other elements of the HR tech stack within your organization that are coming together to provide, better support the employee lifecycle, and how does that fit into your overall direction?
Yeah, it's a big one, and I think technology both enables you and disables you. If you get it horribly wrong, the latter is most relevant. What we're trying to do is we're trying to see, fortunately, our HCM and Eightfold are very compatible. So we're looking forward to seeing as we go live with the new HCM how the ability to have those two systems together and really remove a number of interfaces with other systems, so we have a clearer process around end to end. So for us, that future looks like the HCM, it's the learning management system, it's the applicant tracking system. And so that I think is a real development opportunity for all the players in this space. Again, when you look at technology, HR technology, a lot of it is developed as standalone products, and everybody's trying to connect with each other. I think if we approached it from a different perspective, with the vendors, we're actually looking at what is the optimal cycle, whether it's the candidate cycle, the business cycle, and how do their tools enable that as a collective. But I think that is a very big wish for the future. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, that'll be one to watch for sure. Well, Grant, you bring up a good topic, which is, the plethora of solutions sometimes that we have. And I think historically our ability to view and act on information about our talent has been rather siloed. How we look at our external talent, how we're looking at the talent within our organization as employees. And then that third pillar that we often aren't talking about, but is very large for a lot of organizations. And that's, the alternative workforce aspect, right? That contingent labor aspect, which often has sat, perhaps in procurement, coming through different systems. So when we start to look towards the future, really, and trying to get maybe a view of almost a single pane of glass, to be able to look at the talent that is, working with our organization, regardless of how they're coming into the organization or their status as an employee, I think that's, aspirationally, again, another direction that organizations are really starting to think about. Has that, been part of your planning process, or how do you view that moving forward?
So I think the sort of solution is very challenging. I've used this before, but I think it's very apt in the sort of SaaS-based solutions, a bit like gym memberships. And effectively, one solution has a running machine, the other has a rowing machine. And then for them to grow, they buy the alternate things. And then all of a sudden, as a company, you've got multiple systems doing the same solution. And one of the problems that we have as HR leaders is to try and guide the most efficient way of giving the best solution as possible. So that doesn't mean pushing everyone into a mega gym or saying to everyone, go wherever you want. It's finding that sort of hybrid. So a lot of what I'm focused on is how do we architect sort of gluing together, with different colleagues in HR operations and in our technology teams, the sort of middleware of the talent ecosystem to make sure that the information is flowing and copying it down against someone's record. And what you have to think of through is that where are you going to get this insight and data from? Well, you're getting the insight and data from your recognition system. You're getting insight and data from your PPM, which is your project and portfolio management system. A lot of people aren't copying that data back to someone's record. If someone's working on a blockchain, AI, ML, financial services product for our wealth system, that should be a project. Then the team should get imprinted that skill on those individuals so it becomes searchable. Gig work, how does that get imprinted? How do you get multiple pieces of feedback and place that in there? How do you effectively get certification? Something very basic that you would think everyone has, but not every company stores copies of their employee certifications as a view of competency. Even things like your sort of focus on psychometric tests could potentially show you individuals that have a propensity to one job more than another. And how do you bring that to bear? How do you store that? And how do you do machine learning and AI on it to say, actually, that job really requires a detail-oriented person. And if they do this psychometric test, maybe with a third party like Symetrics or someone, you could actually connect together and make that person more likely to succeed in that role. So are we there today? No, we're not. But obviously, if you start to think about the data and the flow of data and copying that down against someone's profile so other systems can use it and value from it, and individuals can value from it, and the company can, then you start to get to a real talent ecosystem that really is thriving and succeeding for the long term.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with both of you today. Wishing you both the best on your journeys to continue to leverage the right talent in your organizations for success.